I mentioned at the start of the show that Coldplay weren't going to be making an appearance. They've turned up. It's amazing, isn't it? We'll hear from them in a bit. But right now, I need to tell you, I got an email. I did, an actual email. Let me read it to you. Up to the point where I went, I need to talk to this person. It says, Dear Rob, I am a classically trained, award-winning artist. That was it. I was in. I was immediately sold. I needed to talk to this person. And it was, well, it brings me great pleasure to say Stephanie is with us this morning. Morning, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much for reaching out in the first place with your art, which we will unveil shortly in a moment. But, I just love it. I get so excited to talk to creatives, no matter the discipline they kind of focus in. And having looked through the stuff on your website alone, I don't even know where to begin to ask about art for yourself. But are you any good at decorating?
Reasonable, but no, it's not a talent.
Which is surprising given how good your paintings are.
It's totally different, yeah. It's a different skill set.
It's a different thing altogether, isn't it? I wonder if you can take me back, because I do like knowing that moment that the sort of spark went off for people as a creative. Do you remember when you first held a paintbrush?
No, I don't. I really don't. I think I liked drawing from a young age. And it's something that I did more progressively as I got into my teens, but I don't really remember the starting point.
So it was just kind of almost catharsis, a bit of just doodling?
Yeah.
Or
my mum died a few years ago, and I found some of her journals from when we lived abroad when I was young and I was a toddler, and she mentioned in there about me taking to drawing quite early, but it's not something I remember.
Was there then a moment, though, maybe when you were a teenager, when you thought, I'm actually quite good at this?
Not quite good. It's just I realised that I was really into it. I really liked doing it, and then I wouldn't put a sketchbook down, and I wanted to learn about painting and just got more and more involved in it.
So it started off with pencils and drawing in that sense?
Yeah, just like most children. Just, scribbling, drawing, colouring in, that kind of thing, and then just progressing to doing your own things.
Were there like influences? Were you seeing things maybe on television, in magazines that you were going, oh, I wish I could draw that?
I had books when I was younger. Do you remember The Black Cauldron?
Yeah, I know of it.
And things like Garfield and things like that. So I would just copy a lot of characters and things like that. And then eventually just sort of start making up my own pieces.
I was going to say next is, do you remember that moment when you started making your own characters? Because I think a lot of people, when you start doing whether it's art and drawing, whether it's music or poetry, you sort of mimic the stuff that appeals to you somewhat to kind of learn the skill, but...
Not really. Not really, no. There wasn't a sort of single moment and a light bulb moment in that sense. It's just something that naturally I'd always done and continued to do.
We're kind of going back and forward down the timeline, but do you get the same feeling of maybe contentment when you're drawing now or when you're painting now that you did in those early days when you were just enjoying it?
So that's a really hard question to answer for an artist, because most artists will tell you that they are not happy with what they do and they're always striving for the next piece to be better.
Because you're a perfectionist.
Yeah, to a degree. It's just there's such a pursuit of kind of excellence, but also of just wanting to get to that next level within your art.
Are you trying to tell, because I've got a painting next to me, by the way, are you trying to tell me that there is a better level than that? Because I don't think you're right.
Yeah, so it's very kind of you, but I will see things in that and that I know I can improve on in the next piece or that I want to do. So I will look at other artists' work, and I will see things where I think, well, how do they do that? And that's where I need to take my work in the next. And then once I get to that stage, if I get to that stage, then I want to go again and again. And it would just be a continual pursuit. That's why most artists will do it till they die.
So something that probably only happened to me in the last couple of years, and this is context for a reason, I realised how much of like my mum's cooking when we were kids was just trying to put together the simplest thing that would appease 4 children. And now I cook for myself and my other half all the time. Like, I'm realising that I'm doing the same thing. She has no idea whether or not I've done something slightly wrong or but I know it's there. So I sometimes don't always enjoy a meal if I know I didn't cook it as well as I could have done. And I somehow sort of feel that sometimes relates when you're an artist, when you're creative. If you've done something and you know you've made a mistake perhaps along the way, but you've managed to rectify it, you know it's there.
Yeah, I find that painting and drawing is a continual problem solving. So all you're doing is you're going in there kind of like a detective and solving problems and trying to fix things and work things out and maybe find faults quicker that you can correct. So it's just that continual process.
you're always learning. This is something, if you ever hear me on BBC Upload, I say all the time, and I mean it, stand by it. You'll never stop learning if you're open-minded enough as a creative to kind of go, I can do better. I can go more. Been very lucky to talk to numerous authors who've got millions of books been sold and they still get imposter syndrome on their 8th book, on their 9th book, even in their 20s, in the 20s of books. It's same sort of thing. Do you acknowledge you are a very good artist?
I know that I'm a good artist. Do I believe that I can be a better artist? Yes. So I'd probably say that. And there are pieces where you kind of flow and you're really happy with.
Yeah.
And they just, and a lot of the times it's the piece that you have the feeling about is not the one that's popular with other people, but there's something in it that you feel. So I have moments like that, but, sometimes it's a struggle and sometimes it isn't. It's just, you're in it and you get on with it and you just solve the problems in front of you.
You mentioned that in your mum's journals that she obviously saw a very early sign that drawing for you was something that brought you happiness, brought you joy. Was there any artists in the family as well that maybe subliminally kind of planted a bit of a seed for you?
Not like painting and drawing artists. My granddad, who I was really close to, was a clockmaker, but he made brass skeleton clocks. So he was really, he had a lathe and everything in his shed. So he was a real craftsman with it. So you could see the inner workings of the clocks and he'd get balls that move and they tip to turn the hours and the seconds and things. So from that perspective, he had quite an engineering brain, but he's the only real, and my nan, who he was married to, she was tapestry. And needlework, but that's
quite fine, detailed work.
Which probably comes from there. Yeah,
it fascinates me on two levels. One, because if you're exposed to a certain art form at a young age, and I always share the same story about how music got sort of into my skin as a kid. My mum and dad came home from a Genesis concert, played the live CD until it went dead, really. And I love music because of that. And I think if you're exposed to something at a young age, that can often be an open door. But sometimes I think genetics there's just something that gets passed, maybe from parents, but perhaps even grandparents, that the appreciation of fine detail.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, everybody's exposed to art from a young age. So some people stay with it, some people don't. And you can't hide from it when you're young. I'm
so pleased you said that because I completely agree. It's all around us all the time. Everything you're looking at was designed by someone, therefore it was drawn by someone. And I think sometimes we often dissuade young people from considering art as a career, something you can do. And I mean, you're a professional artist. You do these commissions and you do workshops as well, which we can talk about a little bit in a minute. Have you ever dabbled outside of art then? In a creative sense, have you got music in your bones? Is there poetry?
No, I'm a terrible musician, and I've done a bit of sculpture, which is kind of related, and it really is informative for drawing. Because it gets you thinking more three-dimensionally. So you're thinking a lot about the form of the whole being, if you like, as opposed to just looking at it as a 2D surface. And a lot of my work is based on developing form and having something that feels really tangible and that's going to come out of the page or the canvas. But other than that, I am not creative at all. I like cooking, and I know you do too. But other than not really.
See, that fascinates me as well, because I think people dabble in little things, and some people are lucky to find it. I think, like yourself, that early on you have that exposure, and you go, "Oh, I quite like drawing. It's my happy place." As cheesy as that sounds, some people find that in dance or in writing or in drawing, but other people have to kind of go through multiple disciplines to kind of find that one thing. Because I might be really good at tango. I just don't know. I've never really tried to get into it. All right. I want to talk a little bit about the actual work that you've done. And you sent me some beautiful photos, of the paintings you've done and the drawings you've done. You also have work in international collections as well. Like, there are big places that have some of your work, on display, which I think is impressive. And I think I've probably played it down a little bit as to how good your work is. Society of Portrait Painters have some of yours, and I think is it the Royal Scottish Academy as well?
No, they don't hold on to it in their collections, but I've exhibited with them. So I've exhibited with the Royal Portrait Society. They have an annual exhibition, and people who aren't members can enter and have their work shown alongside. So I've done that on multiple occasions, and I've had work shown in the Scottish Royal Scottish Academy, the Royal West of England Academy, and various places like that.
What does it feel like when someone that clearly knows their
Well, you say they clearly know it, but it's so subjective because the way that selections are done is a group of the members that sit there and they hold their hand up as a piece of work whizzes past and say yes or no. And so if that particular group of people are more into a different type of work, so maybe they want abstract portraits, for example, and mine's more classical, then mine's going to be bypassed. So for any young artists out there, they should really not hold that's not the benchmark is to get into those exhibitions. It's great too. It's good for your CV. It's good exposure, and you can get commissions off the back of it. But it's not the be all and end all about believing in your work, that kind of thing.
That is really great advice as well. I think it echoes further beyond art, but for keeping it focused there, it's so important not to take that. Maybe someone passing on something you've done doesn't mean that what you've made is no good. No. That is often quite a hard thing it's quite a hard lesson, I think, to learn. And certainly when you're starting out as an artist, when you first do it, you just want a little bit of someone going, you can do this is really good. You want to hear that, but unfortunately it's not always going to be the case. I want to talk a bit more about technique and the things that you do as well, the landscapes and the portraits that you do, on BBC Essex this morning. We've got some travel news on the way shortly. It's very nearly 11:30. Hi, Rob Jelly. Welcome. Hello. I'm going to talk about art. Yes, a more traditional art form, something I would usually talk about on a Thursday evening with BBC Upload. Painting and drawing, pencil. Stephanie Mills, art.com is where you can find all of the details you need to know about Stephanie, my guest this morning. It's lovely to have you in the studio, Stephanie. Thank you for coming in with some paintings as well. Well, I say paintings. I think you've got one painting there.
Yeah.
Is this pencil?
Yeah, so that's on paper that's been toned with charcoal, and it's actually a mixed media piece. So there's graphite pencil, and then there's charcoal, there's something called conte, and there's some pastel in there as well.
Okay, so this is a combination of different drawing.
Yeah, so mixed medium usually means you use a variety of materials. So, I mean, that's a portrait that I just felt needed a bit more than just one material.
And was it something that you kind of came to the conclusion as you started it? Well, I'll describe it in a minute for people, but did you know that it was going to be a mixed medium?
I knew I was going to do the charcoal ground and then the graphite on top. And to push the graphite darker, sometimes what I do is build up with layers. So I will use charcoal for that. If I can't get it dark enough, then you take it to the next step, which is something like a conte, which is like a dark pencil you can put accents with.
Okay.
What I didn't know when I started that I was going to put the blue pastel in. So that kind of evolved as I went along. Yeah. It's really hard to see because on my website you won't see it as much unless you see the piece in life.
Yeah.
So the hair kind of had this blueness to it. Yeah. And then I expanded that out around the background around her just to balance the piece.
So is this someone you know or someone that kind of asked you to do a portrait of them?
This is a model that I've worked with from Life before. So she's a London model and she does portrait and life modelling, so like nude modelling as well. So she's somebody I've drawn on various occasions. And what we did for this piece, because she wasn't able to sit for the time, it took probably about 65 hours to draw that.
Wow.
So I did a photo shoot with her and used some of the sketches that I got from Life and then obviously the photos as well to help.
I mean, I was going to ask if there was an answer to that question, like how long does it take? I guess it's how long's a piece of string type thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not quite A3, is it? It's probably halfway between A4 and A3 size.
That, yeah.
A 65 hours.
Yes. Yeah, because there's
That's
the
obviously not in one sitting. To be clear, if anyone's slightly confused, Stephanie did sleep.
Yeah, there's the scaffold of the drawing underneath. So there's actually the construction, like the structure of the piece, which is drawn and getting the accuracy of it. And then it's the toning and the turning of the form and then just developing the different aspects. So it is built up. Maybe I might have worked on it over a 2-month period, like putting it down, picking it up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I work on multiple pieces at the same time. So, it's just a build up of, it just takes a long time to get it how you want it.
And is there often a lot of walking away from a piece? Like if you've sat down for, like, say 2 or 3 hours and you're kind of working away and maybe just you're not feeling it for whatever reason. Is that part of the process is just walk away, do something, work on another piece maybe?
There's that. I mean, I've put pieces aside I've just finished a painting that I started 2 years ago because I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with it. It had something in it, but I didn't know what to do with it. Strangely, it was of her as well.
So what was missing?
I don't really know. It was just, it's something that I was just thinking, do I want to glaze it more? What do I want to do with the background? How do I want to bring the figure forward? How do I make her, parts of her the interest, the rest of it fade away? So it's probably more technical and a little bit more compositional for that particular piece.
And is that something that anyone can learn? That everything can be learned, and I'm a big. That's my big thing. Is you can learn anything at any age. I don't want anyone saying otherwise. But certain techniques, certain knowledge you obtain, kind of comes with experience. You can't really rush certain knowledge when it comes to a particular thing, art in this particular instance. So, is this all stuff you knew how to do when you first started, or is it experience?
So, I think there's stuff that you know how to do, but you don't know what it is you know how to do, if that makes sense. You're doing it without realising that you're doing it. I did some training at an atelier in London, which is like an old school where you, how the old masters learn. So it's very rigorous training, and you're in front of a model every day, working from life or in front of casts and getting more complex as you go. So you start understanding the concepts and the principles and kind of like the fundamentals of painting and drawing. And then it's up to you to figure out how you best want to use them. So you can learn some things, but some of it is a little bit more instinctive.
And surely there's an element of this being a Stephanie Mills rather than being a Rob Jelly. I mean, it wouldn't look anything like this if I had 65 million years, but...
Yeah, so I know that people now can recognise, for example, my drawings, and they'll know that it's mine because of the way that I always get the comment that there's a softness about it. Okay. So people do tend to know that that's a piece that I've done.
Which must be a lovely feeling when someone sees something not knowing it's yours and goes, did you do that?
Yeah, it is a nice feeling. I had a small group show in Bath at a gallery there, and somebody messaged me and said that they'd travelled from Wales to see it. And I can, you're like, wow, somebody's gone on a train and gone there just to see my work, which is like a really humbling feeling. But yeah, it's just, it's just a joy to do it. And if people get pleasure from looking at it, then that's just the extra bonus.
I want to ask a few questions about portrait work. Is there a particular part? Right. Because there'll be a few people who know I'm on the radio now, be listening in, and got childish minds. Behave yourselves, family show. Is there a part of the human body that's most difficult to sketch or portrait?
No, in general, people will say that drawing or painting the figure is the hardest, because if somebody's going to hold a pose, they're going to move. It's just natural. You're not a statue. So you're going to move, and there's a lot more components to it. Portraits are, people say, the next difficult, the most difficult. Actually having like moving limbs and, digits and things and, sneezing, coughing, all that kind of stuff, it all makes it difficult. Because
I was going to say, for my love of animation, I know that hands are one of the hardest things to get right, like proportion and movement wise. Obviously that's a moving image, but I wondered if hands might have been up there as being a tricky thing to get right.
Yeah, people struggle with hands and also feet a little bit, but sometimes it's to do with the foreshortening, so how close they are to you or away, because it can make things look larger or smaller. So again, it's just understanding what it is you're actually looking at and what it's doing.
And what might sound like a bizarre question, but I hope is not, how easy is it to choose what you border? Something that you've got this beautiful drawing that's taken you 65 hours to do. How do you decide on what frame it's going in, or do you not and let someone else decide that?
Yeah, I go to an expert. So that one, for example, there's a great team. They're Frinton Frames, actually, down in Frinton itself, and they do a lot of framing. They're really experienced, and the lady there, Moira, she's brilliant. She would just come up with things you wouldn't think about. So that piece, it's kind of a mixture of traditional and contemporary with the way that they framed it, because they've put the green band around the inside, the moulding, and then they've kind of just set it off with this almost antique but contemporary type antique frame, if that makes sense.
I mean, do you know what? I saw it, I knew it was green. I looked at it when I picked it up and was like, but I've only now by realising the contrast between the green and certainly with the blue in that top left-hand corner that you've got. It's I mean, again, I didn't want that to sound like a daft question, because ultimately this frame and the border that's around it is as much a part of this whole piece now as what you've done with pencil and charcoal. I wonder if we can talk about the other one you've got, which is a landscape, completely different. And I mean, how different a skill set is portrait work to a landscape?
So it's different in the sense of the way of learning painting, it's really good to work from life, from a model, and deal with the difficulties of it. The beauty of landscape painting is that if you don't make the tree look exactly like the tree, it's not going to shout at you. It's not going to be unhappy with it. Whereas
point.
if you do that with a portrait and somebody, well, it just doesn't look like them.
That's not my nose.
Yeah, that exactly. So you're going to get a bit of grief for that. But it's a slightly freer discipline in that sense, but they both have, like, you know, a lot going for them.
I was going to say, more annoyingly though, I mean, you can tell a human to stay still as best they can, or take photos of it, and that's a landscape constantly changes day to day.
Yeah, so if you're painting outside, which is like they call it plein air painting, so if you're doing that and the light is changing, you have a short period of time to paint within. So you might use a couple of hours before the light changes dramatically. So you do quick sketches, quick paintings that are a lot looser and a lot rougher. These paintings are more finished, so I've spent a lot more time kind of finessing them in the studio.
So you go back, so would you go outside, do that sort of first couple of hours, sort of sketch, and then bring it inside to work on it?
The ideal scenario would be to go to the place, do some sketches, do some colour notes, because colour's very different in life than it is in photographs. Photographs distort a lot of things. So it's really a good idea to get some kind of colour notes, even if it's not a full painting, just blocks of colour that you can rely on, and then just some references, some drawings that you can take back in the studio and work from.
I could talk to you about this all day. I have so many questions. I have just probably too many questions right now. But I know you do teach, you do workshops as well. And as someone, you know, who's a proper advocate for creative art and getting anyone just to give it a go, because you might be absolutely rubbish at painting, but if you've never tried, you've never truly given it an actual chance, you're not going to know that. Same as I would say about theatre, about music, about poetry, anything else. So what your workshops, are they for absolute beginners? Could someone like me, who is only probably good at sketching tracing and stickmen is pretty much my level. Could I learn at one of your workshops?
Yeah, absolutely. They're for all levels. So I do the workshops, but I also do like online and personal tuition as well. So it's tailored for everybody. The way that I approach teaching is that everybody is at a different standard or comes to a class wanting to get something different out of it. So I tailor my approach to each individual based on what they're looking for. And that way you can deal with, you can help the people that are just starting and they need to get those basics in place, as well as the more advanced students.
I know you mentioned that you took 2 years to do a piece you've just finished.
Well, not 2 years solid.
No. What is the greatest amount of hours spent on one piece?
Probably near 200.
And what was it?
But I think part of that was because I was learning and it was just taking me a long time to figure things out. So I think that was a painting like a few years back now.
So do you think if you did it again today, you could do it? Well, obviously not today, but like you could do it quicker?
Yeah, I've definitely. What you need to do when you sort of start learning this method of painting and drawing is go slow, and then you sort of learn how to self-critique. And as you progress and as you do it more often and as you keep going, then you'll just get faster and you'll be able to correct your mistakes faster, because you're still making mistakes, you're just seeing them and you're correcting them quicker than you were. And
you also know better ways of correcting them as well. I guess you learn, sort of easier, simpler ways of making a correction rather than going, right, in the bin, start again. Yeah. Because that's not the way to do it at all. Yeah. Now, out of interest, where is this landscape?
This is Highlands. This is actually up the road in Highlands Park. So it's the Serpentine Lake down at Highlands. I spent a summer kind of going up and down from Highlands, and I've done several paintings of the lake. And I was just saying to your colleague that the house should be round about here, but it didn't really work for the painting, so I ignored it.
You deleted Highlands House
instead.
I like that. Yeah. There's a happy little accident, happy little tree over here in Bob Ross style. That's lovely. That's a cloud's quite hard to do. Oh, I've got so many questions. Are clouds quite hard to do?
Yeah, they can be, because they're very different, and obviously there's so many different types of clouds as well. So it's what you try to do when you do this. So, for example, this painting's got clouds, trees, river, and a path. Yeah. Everything has its own anatomy. It sounds silly, but it does. So then you're trying to understand, what is the anatomy of a cloud, or this particular type of cloud? What are these trees doing? How do I describe the difference between, say, this one tree and another tree? And all that kind of thing is what you're thinking about while you're painting it.
I want to ask that because from here I can see there are smaller trees, and smaller trees are further away than the bigger trees. That's sort of how perception makes sense. But you've made the water look like it's moving in a stationary painting, and I don't know. I don't understand, Stephanie, what you've done, but you've you've done an amazing job. It's beautiful. And I'm so grateful to you for reaching out to let us know about the work you do. Because I'm here for this. I'm here for you. I'm here for anyone else that's doing visual work, whether it's with paint, oil, pencil. If you do it with photography or film, please come and be a part of what we do on BBC Upload as well. But, let us know here at BBC Essex, because we'll happily champion you, whether it's with Akila, with Sonia, with Ben, with Sadie at the weekends as well. StephanieMillsArt.com is your website, is where people can find out all about you and people want to commission.
Yes, my Instagram's the same as well.
Fabulous stuff. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for bringing these in as well. They're absolutely stunning. And yeah, please go and have a look at some of these in photograph form, at least, on Stephanie's website as well. Let's support each other in our creative arts.
BBC.